Should we kill babies just because they're expensive? Today on the podcast, we tackle the subject of abortion. Hi, I'm Keaton Halley, here with Lita Cosner of Creation Ministries. Hello, Lita.
Hi, Keaton.
Lita has an MA in New Testament, and I'm an apologist and speaker with CMI. And as a kind of a premise for today's show, I wanted to deal with an email that got sent to us through our website. It was written by Mr. F.K., and he said this: I have an idea that would stop abortion. It costs $230,000 to raise a child in the U.S. Maybe you anti-abortion folks could donate the money to help poor women bring up these unwanted children. Are you personally willing to come up with the money to save one baby? Yes, I thought not. So, kind of a snarky way to conclude there. But you've actually written an article about this, Lita, that was published on our website on September 28. And why don't you just spell out a few of the points that you made in response?
Well, obviously, we all know that it's wrong to kill people, and abortion really is a form of murder. And so we all know that murder is wrong. It's wrong to kill innocent human beings.
Yeah, why don't we begin that way, to just simply lay out a basic case for why abortion is wrong? Because here he's sort of trying to argue against the pro-life position. But if somebody said to you, what's wrong with abortion? It seems like it's a woman should have the right to do what she wants with her body. Then how would you make the case for the pro-life position?
Well, in essence, we believe that every human life is valuable because humans are uniquely created in the image of God. And God has forbidden us from killing innocent humans because humans are created in God's image. And so we would apply that to humans from the earliest point of life, which is conception, to the end of their life. So we believe abortion is wrong because it is the ending of an innocent human life. And we believe that all human life is valuable because we are created in the image of God. And God has forbidden us from taking innocent human life. And we would apply that from the very earliest point of life, from conception, to the end of natural life.
Yeah. So the basic argument really has two premises that lead to a conclusion. It's that there's a moral premise that taking innocent human life is wrong on the one hand, and then a premise that you might say is empirical, things that we know from science, that the unborn is a whole living, distinct human being, and abortion takes that life.
Yes, and really from a medical point of view, from a scientific point of view, this is not even contestable.
Very good. But what Mr. FK seems to be doing is not taking a direct attack on that line of argument. Instead, he seems to be really bypassing the argument altogether, and instead challenging pro-lifers to put up the money. And if they're not willing to do that in his mind, then abortion is justified.
Yeah. Well, he's really trying to disqualify us from even commenting. And pro-abortion people will do that a lot. They'll say, well, because you'll never carry a baby, you have no right to comment on women's pregnancies. You're not a woman. Or they'll say, if you're not facing this specific set of hardships, you can't understand, so you can't speak to that. This is just another type of disqualification, and really, it's not a valid argument.
It's an ad hominem argument, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it attacks the character of the pro-lifer rather than dealing with the fundamental issue, which is what is the unborn.
Yes, and it's even a false argument because really many pro-lifers do put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
All across the U.S. and many other Western nations, we have pregnancy resource centers, which are charities mostly funded by Christians that connect pregnant women with resources, and some of them even provide medical services there. And there is a long list of people waiting to adopt children. Now, obviously, when you adopt a child, you take on all of the costs associated with raising that child, both emotional, economic. So there's no reason to abort a child because of money.
Yeah, and from my understanding, Lita, you actually have some personal experience working in these pro-life health centers, don't you?
Yes, I spent a couple years volunteering in one of these pregnancy resource centers, and I spoke with a lot of women who were considering abortion, and really, women would bring up the economics as part of the fear of, being pregnant, but more than that, if they felt insecure in their relationships, if they felt like their partner was not going to be supportive or their family was not going to be supportive, that was a much bigger issue. So once we were able to connect them with resources, a lot of times that was part of the issue, but really the bigger issue was letting them know that there was social support available.
Yeah. And so pro-lifers certainly have done much of this work in not only providing for the financial needs of women who have an unwanted pregnancy, but also taking care of many of their emotional and even spiritual needs as well.
Yes. And just to emphasize, even if these wonderful programs were not available, this would not make it right to abort a baby. And it would not make pro-life arguments any less valid.
Yeah, I like the example that you gave in your article about, do you remember what you said, how this case of slavery relates to this
Yes,
issue?
I said that it's a bit like saying that unless you're willing to pay for the emancipation of all the slaves, then you can't talk about slavery. You can say, no, these are people made in the image of God and they should not be enslaved, even if you don't have the money or aren't willing to use your money to free the slaves. But we know that, in fact, abolitionists did use their money to free slaves. So
it's very much a parallel. And I think it exposes how it is more of an attack on our character. I mean, imagine if we were just as bad as Mr. FK assumes, and we weren't willing to put up the money, it still wouldn't justify the taking of these innocent human lives.
Exactly. And actually, it's ironic talking about unborn babies being expensive, and that's a reason to kill them, because really, an unborn child is at the least expensive point in their lives.
That's a good point. They only get more expensive as they begin to grow up and consume more food and require, more clothing and so forth. And I think that's a key point, because a common argument that pro-lifers give in response to pro-choice arguments is this concept of trotting out the toddler. What I mean by that is, if they say that the reason that abortion is justified is because the child is too expensive, well, you say, well, let's apply that same logic to a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. Are you justified in taking the life of that 2-year-old, the toddler, because they're expensive? Well, no. And if not, then shouldn't the same thing apply to the unborn, who is just as valuable and made in the image of God as the toddler?
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And we're even seeing it's an issue that we devalue human life in the womb. And we're even seeing today wrongful birth lawsuits where people have a disabled child and they say, I'm going to sue the doctor because if they'd done tests and found this out, I would have had an abortion. I would rather have a dead child than a disabled child.
Yeah, the fundamental problem here is that people need a change in worldview, don't they? They need to have that creation foundation to see that all human beings are made in God's image. From the womb to the tomb, we're valuable. And so we human beings don't have the right to take one another's lives without proper justification. Well, thanks for being with me, Lita. Audience, you can click on the links below for more information and join us again next time.